Today, we're tackling a coin that every single Canadian has held at some point. It's small, it's silver, and it features a boat that's seen more of Canada than most of us. That's right, we're talking about the 1975 Canadian dime. You've probably got a handful of these in a jar somewhere. The big question we're answering today is, what is the 1975 Canadian dime worth? And could you have a small fortune sitting in your couch cushions? We're going to break this down into three parts. First, the history and design of this iconic coin. Second, the mintage figures and what they mean for value. And third, the specific varieties and errors that can turn this common coin into a numismatic superstar. So let's get started. Before we talk numbers, we have to talk about the ship itself. This isn't just any boat. This is the Bluenose. Launched in 1921 in Nova Scotia, the Bluenose was a legendary fishing and racing schooner. It was undefeated in international fishing schooner races for 17 years, becoming a powerful symbol of Canadian pride and skill. The design was created by Walter Ott in 1937, and it has been a staple of the Canadian dime ever since. So, when you hold a 1975 dime, you're not just holding 10 cents. You're holding a little piece of Canadian maritime history. The 1975 dime is part of a long-running series. It's made of pure nickel, which gives it that classic, bright silver look. It has a mass of 2.07 grams and a diameter of 18.03 millimeters. And on the obverse, of course, is the portrait of a young Queen Elizabeth II by Arnold Machin. But here's a key point for 1975. This was the last year of the young bust portrait by Machin. In 1977, a new portrait was introduced. This makes the 1975 part of the end of an era, which can sometimes add a little collectible intrigue. Okay, let's get to the heart of the matter, value. And for that, we need to talk about how many were made. If a coin is rare, it can be valuable. If it's common, well, not so much. Let me say that again. Over 137 million. Asterisk asterisk, that is a massive number. To put that in perspective, Canada's population in 1975 was around 23 million. That's roughly 6 dimes for every man, woman, and child in the country. I know. It's not the exciting answer you might have been hoping for. Because so many were made, and because so many people saved them, the market is absolutely saturated with 1,975 dimes in lower grades. They are, for all intents and purposes, just 10-cent pieces. Let's talk condition. A worn 1975 dime is worth 10 cents. However, a 1975 dime that has never been circulated, that is in mint state condition, is a different story than a typical uncirculated 1975 dime. What we call MS 60 to MS 63 might be worth between $1 and $3. Still not life-changing, but a 10x to 30x increase over face value. But if you have one in superb gem condition, say MS 65 or higher, the value starts to climb. We're talking $5 to $15, and for the absolute finest examples graded by PCGS or NGC, perhaps even more. So, how do you know if yours is uncirculated? Look for the cartwheel luster, a shimmering effect when you rotate it under a light. There should be no scratches, nicks, or wear on the highest points, like the sail of the Bluenose or the Queen's cheek. The 1975 dime has a few known errors that are highly sought after. If you have one of these, you might be in for a payday. This is the holy grail for this year. In 1975, the Royal Canadian Mint experimented with a new plating process and produced a small number of dimes at its Winnipeg facility. These should have a tiny W mint mark, but a very small number were struck without it. Finding a genuine 1975 No S dime is incredibly rare. If you have one that is certified by a major grading service, it could be worth hundreds of dollars, even in lower grades. This happens when the obverse and reverse dies smash together without a planchet. The blank coin, in between. The design from one side gets imprinted as a ghost image onto the other. A strong, well-defined die clash can add a significant premium. We're talking $20 to $50 or more, depending on the severity. Look for any doubling in the lettering or the date. Also, look for strike-through errors, where a piece of debris got between the die and the planchet, creating a blob or an odd raised line on the coin. These can be unique and valuable to error collectors. So let's recap. Your average 1975 dime is worth 10 cents. But It's always worth taking a closer look. Point 1. Check your jars. Asterisk. If you have a 1975 dime, pull it out. Point 2. Inspect for condition. Asterisk. Is it pristine, with original luster? If so, it might be worth a few dollars. Consider getting it graded if it looks absolutely perfect. Point 3. Hunt for errors. Asterisk. Get a magnifying glass and look closely. Check for the missing W mint mark. Look for ghost images from a die clash, and examine the date and lettering for any doubling. Point 4. Don't get scammed. Asterisk. Be wary of eBay listings showing rare 1975 dime for $100. Check the sold listings to see what people are actually paying. Most of those are just people hoping to catch someone who doesn't know the mintage numbers. The 1975 dime is a wonderful, common coin with a deep history. While it won't make you rich, the hunt for a high-grade specimen or a rare error is what coin collecting is all about. It turns a simple piece of currency into a fascinating piece of detective work. So, the next time you get one in your change, give it a second look. You never know, you might just be holding one of the rare ones. Today, we're pulling the camera all the way back to answer a bigger question. How did this little coin, with its iconic schooner, even come to be? We're embarking on a journey through the entire history of the Canadian 10-cent piece. It's a story that spans from the earliest days of Confederation, through a radical change in our currency, and straight to the legendary ship that became a national symbol on our dime. Before Canada was a country, its currency was a chaotic mix. British pounds, Spanish dollars, and Portuguese joes all circulated freely. Among the small change were various bits and fractions, but there was no standardized Canadian dime. It wasn't the Bluenose. The reverse featured a simple, yet elegant, wreath of maple leaves. The obverse featured the portrait of a young Queen Victoria. These coins were made of solid silver, 0.925 fine, a tradition that would last for nearly a century. In 1911, Canada updated its coinage. The reverse design got larger, leading to the large cent nickname. But the most significant change was on the obverse. The new design, by Sir E.B. Mackinnell, featured a crowned portrait of King George V. This crowned effigy, combined with the wreath on the back, made the Canadian dime look strikingly similar to the American barber dime of the same era. This was no accident. It reflected the close economic ties and the flow of currency across the border. Now we arrive at the most pivotal moment in the dime's history. 1937. A new king was on the throne, George VI, requiring a new obverse portrait. But rather than just update the king's side, the Canadian government decided to completely overhaul the reverse designs of all its coins to feature distinctly Canadian symbols. A public competition was held, and the winner for the dime was a young artist from Ontario named Walter Ott. His subject? The legendary Nova Scotia fishing and racing schooner, the Bluenose, that launched in 1921. The Bluenose was more than just a boat. It was a champion. It dominated the International Fisherman's Trophy race for 17 years, never being defeated. It became a symbol of Canadian skill, endurance, and pride, especially important during the tough years of the Great Depression. The first Bluenose dime was minted in 1937, and it was an instant classic. It captured the ship in full sail, heeled over and cutting through the waves. A moment of dynamic power frozen on a small silver disc. 1967-1968 ** for the centennial year, and a brief period after, it was made of 50% silver, 50% copper, but the 1960s brought a global crisis in silver. The metal's value was rising so dramatically that the intrinsic value of the silver in the coins was threatening to exceed their face value. It was no longer economically sustainable. So, in 1968, Canada made a historic shift ***. It abandoned silver for its circulating coinage. The new dimes, from 1968 onward, were made from pure nickel, a nickel-copper alloy, but often called pure nickel in numismatics. They retained the same Bluenose design, but they lost their silver luster and their metallic composition. And this brings us right back to our friend, the 1975 dime. Point 1. Made of nickel, it had been 7 years since the switch from silver. Point 2. Highly common with a mintage of over 137 million. It was a workhorse of the Canadian economy. Point 3. The end of an era on one side ***. It featured the young bust portrait of Queen Elizabeth II by Arnold Mackin, which was about to be replaced in 1977.4. A keeper of tradition on the other asterisk, it proudly carried the decades-old Bluenose design, a symbol now familiar to generations of Canadians. The 1975 dime is a perfect snapshot of modern Canadian coinage, common, practical, but still carrying a profound historical and cultural weight. The story doesn't end in 1975, of course. In 2000, after 63 years of service, the Bluenose design was replaced on the regular circulation dime by a new design featuring a modern sailboat, as part of the Canadian Journey series. The Bluenose, however, was too beloved to disappear. It was moved to the 2002 10-cent map coin, and it continues to appear on special edition and precious metal coins, ensuring its legacy sales on .so. The history of the Canadian dime is a journey from colonial